All right, so welcome to the writing workshop, the first writing workshop of 2019. Thanks for joining me today. The reason I like to start the essay writing process off with a workshop, because the rest of the time we're going to be working on these essays one-on-one, but I like to start off with a workshop because I think it's really important that we start off by sort of like unlearning some of the essay tips that maybe you learned in your AP English classes, which are wonderful and great essay tips, but not so great for like vulnerable personal essay writing, which is what we're going to be doing. So I really like to just start off on a clean slate. Even if you're the best of writers and you have A's in your English classes, it's really important that we kind of start fresh here and that you keep an open mind and participate in some of these activities to really get a feel for what these college essays need to feel like and how they need to read. So we'll be going over some activities, some brainstorming activities, and then we'll talk a little bit about essay structure, and then we'll end by talking about the 7 prompt options for the Common App essay. So the 2019 essay prompts are available now. They haven't changed much since last year. So we'll go over those, and then I'll have you do a couple of activities to narrow down your options and hopefully pick the final prompt of the 7 that you feel most comfortable with. And I'll give you at the very end some free write time. So you'll leave with sort of a beginning of a draft. And then the bulk of our meetings from here on out, if you're a comprehensive student, is we're going to be working one-on-one on these essays. So pretty much every other meeting from now until the end of the summer is really devoted to essays. And then in August and September, pretty much every meeting is devoted to essays. On average, my students write about 15 essays. Now, not all of those are original brand new essays. Sometimes you can reuse essays. For example, if 2 colleges ask about your background story or a time you've grown or a time you've failed or messed up, you can obviously reuse an essay for that. But anytime a school asks, why do you want to come here, or what unique qualities about our school do you think are a good fit for you, those need to be new essays. So those tend to be the hardest essays. They require the most research. But in many cases, you can reuse at least a few essays. So to get started, I want to make sure all of you received the handout for today. It's I saved it. I shared it with all of you as like a PDF. So if you did not get that, go ahead and text me in the chat box, and I can email it over to you. Let's see. I don't think anyone. Let's see. Oh, okay. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and send it out to Sydney. Let's see, go ahead and text me if anybody else did not receive it. Okay, so it was attached to the confirmation email, but I'm gonna go ahead and resend it to a couple of you here. And so if all of you can make sure you've taken the student archetype quiz now, and I can give you a few minutes if you haven't yet, because I wanna know your archetype. You don't have to share it with me, but it's one of the first activities to help you think about the personal statement and how you talk about yourself. So if you haven't taken that, go over to alexellison.com/quiz, take that. It takes about, I don't know, 3 minutes, and just take note of your archetype. And I'll wait a couple minutes. Go ahead and just text me ready when you're ready, or if you've already done it. All right, so it looks like everyone's taken it. And so if you have your archetype, go ahead and just make a note of that. There were 7 types, and this is just a fun, really simple way to get started. But thinking about your archetype is going to hopefully help you get started on this journey to writing a very personal essay. We want to give you lots of language to talk about yourself. I remember one of my students, this was a few years ago, when he finally got into his colleges, I was like, congratulations, you must be so excited. He's like, yeah, but the best part is that I don't have to write about myself anymore. So you will be writing about yourself a lot. And so I want to give you as many tools and images and words and phrases to talk about you and describe you in interesting ways, more interesting ways than just I'm smart and hardworking. So the next thing I want you to do is head on over to your UScience assessment. And so I'm going to share my screen just to show you where I want you to go. All of you have had a UScience assessment. I can say that based on who's on the call. So go ahead and navigate over to UScience, log in, and click on the Describing You tab. And I'll wait a couple minutes to make sure you're all there. Okay, so once you're all there, you'll see you have this this basically box of words that describe you. And this is mine, so you can, I'm being very vulnerable here and showing you my vocabulary. So this is a starting point for you. But if you scroll down, you can get more in-depth phrases that describe you based on your different characteristics and your different aptitudes. So based on work approach, these are some phrases that describe me. Based on my interpersonal style, I'm an extrovert, so these are some phrases that describe me, time frame orientation, and so on. So go ahead and browse that for just a couple minutes. And then I want you to go back to this worksheet here and fill out this sentence. So once you've got a few good words and phrases from your describing you section, I want you to fill in the sentences. I am a blank at heart, which is your archetype that you just discovered. I am blank, blank, and blank. I hope to become more blank and blank. So you got some adjectives there to describe yourself. And so let me know if you have any questions, text me in the box, in the chat box. Otherwise, I'm going to pause for a few minutes while you all fill out the blanks there. All right, so let me share my screen with you here so you can see that what you're filling in based on your U-Science adjectives, words, and phrases that describe you. So you're basically completing the following, and you should have this here in your worksheet. I am a blank at heart, which is your archetype that you discovered from the student archetype quiz. I am blank, blank, and blank, so 3 adjectives that describe you from U-Science. I hope to become more blank, blank, and blank. So 3 more adjectives that describe kind of what you're striving towards or how you hope to grow. What we're getting at here is connecting who you are now and kind of who you're hoping to become. Either in the next few years or in the next 10 years, that doesn't really matter right now, but we're just getting some good descriptors here. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and give you about 1 more minute and then we'll come back together. All right, so the next activity we're going to do, again, from this worksheet here, and I'll share my screen with you, is a values exercise. This is a quick values exercise. You see this list of values here right below the activity you just did. So it's called What Do You Value? And you're just going to circle all the things you currently value or want for yourself in the future. So either current or future focused. Go ahead and circle all of them that are important to you. There's no limit here, so you can circle as many as you like. So I'll give you about a minute to do that activity. Again, you can highlight them, you can write them out in a separate document. If you are doing this on paper, you can go ahead and circle them, whatever you prefer. All right, so at this point now, you've done the student archetype quiz, you've looked at U-Science, you've got some good descriptors for yourself, and you've gone ahead and circled your values. So what I want to do now is take a little pivot, and I'm going to share my screen with you. This is a bit of an unconventional thing that I actually added this year, because what I noticed is that when my students write essays, they're really good at sort of telling and struggle with really showing, and this is like a total cliche that you've probably heard English teachers say as well, but it is true, and it's really, really true for the college essays. And one of the best ways that we kind of paint a picture for the reader is through dialogue. So good dialogue is really, really hard, asking the author. But I want to do a little activity with this today just to get you thinking about dialogue. Very, very rarely do I see students use dialogue in their college essays, but it really, really brings life to the essay and captures the reader's attention in a really new way. And so I want you to practice with the little dialogue. Now, I'm going to give you the freedom to have a conversation with yourself, with your alter ego, with someone else, with something else. We all have been in that place where we're like yelling at an inanimate object, so that's okay. You can definitely create a dialogue with a thing. But you're obviously playing both parts. So you're just going to write a few lines of dialogue here in this box provided in your worksheet, again, or on a separate piece of paper or in a separate Word document. And it's going to read like a movie script. So this is going to feel a little bit awkward and unnatural at first. I don't think we write dialogue very much, so it's a little bit strange in the beginning. but I want you to try having those kind of conversations in your head, which I know we all do, but getting those on paper. So I'm gonna give you about 2 to 3 minutes to fill up this box, some great dialogue, either between yourself, you and yourself, or someone else, or something else. So I'll give you a few minutes to work on that. All right, so hopefully you've got a nice dialogue box there. That was a nice practice activity. This is something that does require a lot more practice. So if you kind of had fun with this activity, I would encourage you to do more of this in like your daily journaling exercises if you do that for yourself personally. And I am going to challenge all of you to try to incorporate some dialogue into your essays this year. I really haven't done that in the past or made that a focal point in the past, but I have found that it makes essays that much richer. So be ready for that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you again. I want to show you all a demo page on College Planner Pro. All of you have a College Planner Pro account. If you are having trouble logging in or you don't remember how to log into your College Planner Pro account, send me a text in the chat box and I can resend you your login if you're a newer student and you haven't used it yet. I can send you your login right now because you'll need that for the next activity. So shoot me a text if that's you. But I want to share my screen with you. This is my demo account named after my 5-year-old daughter who has a long way to go before college. But I wanted to show you all how to use this site for the next activity. And also this next activity is really helpful for helping you narrow down and clarify your college list. What I've found is that when you have to write the why us essay or tell us why you want to come to this school essay, and if that's really impossible for you and you're not lit up by that, that might be a good indicator that this is not the right school for you to apply to. So for this next activity, we're doing a college matchmaker exercise where basically you're going to click on one of the schools on your list. If you don't have your list yet, if you're a new student, you might look at some of the schools I've suggested for you, or you can go ahead and search for new schools here in College Planner Pro. But you'll click on the school and go to the school's profile. And I want you to get, this is your quick snapshot. So glean whatever you want from this simple stats page, how selective it is, how big it is it urban or suburban, what is the location like, what is the retention rate, what is the male to female ratio or divide. The FISC guide provides a wonderful narrative about this school. There isn't a FISC guide for every single school in the country, but for most of them, and even for international schools, for most of those, you'll find some information, some stats. The FISC guides, though, give really great character descriptions of the school, the strongest majors, and some overlap institutions. Basically, these are schools that students who applied to this school were also interested in. And then if you go to the main page, you can go head over to the third-party resources. It's Nacho or University TV will give you some virtual tours of a few schools. Not all of them, but some of them have virtual tours. CapEx and College Prowler will provide student testimonials. College Board or Big Future, I know you're familiar with that, will provide additional statistics. So basically, for this next exercise, you're going to take a look at your favorite colleges and universities up to this point. And I did ask you in my email reminder to prepare this in advance, but if you didn't get around to it, I'm going to give you a few minutes to collect that information, probably not enough time to grab all the information you want about your top 5 schools. So hopefully you did a little bit of research beforehand. And you're going to list the top 5 on the top of the columns on the next page. So right here, you'll list your top 5 schools so far. And you're going to do a little digging, find your favorite features, majors, values, characteristics, and quirks for each of the colleges that are your top 5 at this point in time. And then in each of the corresponding boxes below, you're going to write a few ways that your experiences, personality traits, and desires connect to the features you wrote for each college. So I have an example here for, I picked Swarthmore College. So I said Swarthmore is collaborative, close to a major city, quirky students, selective, East Coast, rigorous honors program, and sends lots of students to PhD programs. And then I just sort of made this up. I could say that for myself, I want to get a PhD in history and have already started a layman's history podcast. Not true, but I made that up. I want to live on the East Coast, always have. I have family near Swarthmore, that actually is true. I am a self-proclaimed nerd, that's also kind of true. I want to be in a small collaborative environment. So I want you to do this for each of your 5 schools. Pick the top features for that school and the corresponding features or experiences for yourself that correspond. So I'm going to give you some time to do this because this will take a little bit more time, especially if you didn't have a chance to do this research in advance of this session. So a few of you are needing access to your College Planner Pro account, so I will send that over to you now, and I'm going to give you some time to work this out and text me if you have any questions. So hopefully you've got a few things to work on, and again, you can continue this college matchmaking activity as your college favorites change, and be ready to bring this to our future meetings so we can continue discussing that. But again, that college matchmaker activity is really helpful for those why us essays, why do you want to come here essays. You have to be able to show that it's sort of like a match made in heaven, not just repeating, you're not just wanting to repeat their brochure. Okay, let me share my screen with you again. We're going to move into a moment in time exercise. So I'm currently reading the book Even Cowgirls Get the Blues by Tom Robbins. He's one of my favorite authors, and he spends several pages talking about one of the main characters' thumbs. So this is an example of like high level detail, and really focusing on a slice of the pie, not sort of washing down the whole pie, if that makes sense. We know that in great literature, the details are there. So I want you to take a moment to think about a single moment in your life that carries some meaning for you. It can be whatever. It could be something from your childhood. It could be something from yesterday. This is not a life event, a test, or a big game. Rather, think about the final moment of that high-stakes test, or the high five with a teammate after winning a game, or locking eyes with someone in a moment of like, that intense final part of the game for you athletes on the call. Imagine you are taking a magnifying glass to a small sliver in your life's history. So now you're going to amplify that moment in this activity. You're going to turn that single moment into 5 juicy, beautifully detailed sentences. And I don't want you to worry about grammar. I don't want you to worry about the rules of the game. I just want you to really practice finding a sliver in time that you can dive into with intense detail. And it can also be not just a description of your environment or the surroundings or another person, but a really high-level, detailed description of your thoughts in that moment, or your feelings or emotions in that moment. So it doesn't just have to be the outside, it can be going inside too. So I'm going to give you probably 4 to 5 minutes for this activity. And again, this is something that you could absolutely come back to and continue to work on after the workshop. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to give you about 4 to 5 minutes. So again, I'll go ahead and turn off my screen to give you some time to focus on this moment in time activity. All right, so thanks so much for those of you who shared in the moment in time activity. And again, I think like we saw from the examples, you should be able, hopefully, to tell us briefly why that's the moment you picked. Why it holds some significance, and maybe you don't even know what that significance is yet, but for some reason it came top of mind really quickly. So I would challenge you to go think about why that moment that came to your head so quickly is significant, because it probably is. So that was super fun. Thank you so much for doing that. And again, I know that was really quick. So for those of you who need more writing time, you're welcome to come back to this activity or do it multiple times again. You guys will hear me say this a lot, but I'm such a fan of regular daily journaling, and hopefully these activities will give you some ideas about what to journal about, and it truly will make you a better writer, so I hope you will take advantage of that. So now we're going to get into the prompts for 2019. So I always start with the common application prompts, and in case you are wondering which schools that you're interested in are actually on the common application, you can go into your College Planner Pro account, and any school with a pink box next to the title is on the Common Application. So the Common App accepts hundreds and hundreds of schools, and it's nice because you've got one application for a good chunk of your schools. So for some of my students, all their schools are on the Common App. But that doesn't mean that you only have to write one essay. There is one essay that's common to all the schools on the Common App, but many of the schools will also have additional supplemental essays. But what we start with is this Common App prompt because it's available now. We know what the prompts are. And my goal is to have all my students finish the Common App essay. It's a 650-word essay finish it before summer break. That way you don't have to worry about this one over summer break. This is always the hardest essay to write because it's usually your first essay. Once you get comfortable with this style of writing, the others will be much, much easier. You'll have generated a lot of good ideas from this workshop and just through writing, that the other supplemental essays will be easier. And we'll work on those through the summer and into the fall. So let's see the prompts. Number 1, some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. So my kind of note about this prompt is there a story you've always wanted to tell about yourself? Did you come to this workshop knowing exactly what you want to tell admissions officers? Like, is there that story that even before you even started planning for college, you thought, I'm going to tell this story in my college essays? One of my friends who actually ended up going to Harvard, I was talking to her about a year ago about essay writing, and she said she knew very early on what her story was. Like, she knew she had a story to tell, and she said it to me like in very fierce terms, like, I was going to make sure admissions officers knew my story, like they had to hear my story. So that was a big part of her application, and there was like no doubt in her mind what her story was going to be. So I don't know which prompt she picked. The prompts haven't changed a lot over the years, but this would be a good one for that type of student. Number 2, the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? So think about those times you stumbled that led to something great, or the times you've failed that taught you a valuable lesson. What obstacles in your life have made you who you are today? Now, a lot of students misinterpret this essay prompt. In fact, they've changed the essay prompt a couple of times because of misunderstandings and misinterpretations. A lot of students sort of understood this to be like a sob story. Like, I need to have this like heart-wrenching sob story for prompt number 2. And that really is not the case. What admission officers are curious to know, and I would say most people are curious to know about you, is how have you grown? Like, when have you stumbled, made mistakes, had, failures, and how did you grow from those? I mean, I could tell many, many stories of failure in my life. And I know sometimes it can be tough to think about those instances when you, are sort of in high school and things are a little bit like insulated. But I know all of you have had disappointment. And I mean, we heard one of those stories about disappointment, which later turned into excitement and joy in the sample we heard. But I think all of you can think of something for this. But that doesn't mean all of you will choose prompt number 2. But I just wanted to broaden the understanding for prompt number 2. Number 3 is reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking? What was the outcome? Think about arguments or debates you've had with friends or family. Did you grow up with a specific belief that you are now starting to question? I had a student write for this prompt this year, actually. He's a senior. He went to a Catholic school, grew up in a very conservative Catholic family, and is still currently like trying to formulate his own opinions. And so it was a really cool, vulnerable essay where he was just like, I'm still figuring this out, but I'm definitely finding gaps. Like, I'm starting to see the gaps in sort of my family's philosophy or my family's understanding about the world. And I'm starting to see how I differ from them. And so that was a really cool essay to read, just because he wasn't pointing fingers, he wasn't saying one was better than the other, one ideology was better than the other, but really like talking through his questioning. So that's the type of essay you want to think about for that prompt. Also, like debates maybe you've had in class with peers and friends can be really cool to write about as well. Number 4, describe a problem you've solved or a problem you'd like to solve. It can be an intellectual challenge, a research query, an ethical dilemma, anything that is of personal importance, no matter the scale. Explain its significance to you and what steps you took or could be taken to identify a solution. So are you an advocate for a cause? Is there something you think is worth fighting for? What fires you up? Like, is there that thing that you're kind of known for or known for caring about in your school or in your community? Like, is there that thing that you are just relentless about fixing? that might be the prompt for you if that's the case. Number 5, discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others. So think about your greatest aha moments. Maybe you were listening to music, visiting a new country, talking to someone new, or just daydreaming. But like, what was that realization? So, you know, Cameron shared her realization with us, her kind of aha moment in the least likely of situations. And so think about what that might mean for you, or if you've had that yet. And if you haven't, that maybe isn't the prompt for you. But that's kind of a fun one to write about, even if the aha moment was just in your head, it just sort of as you're listening to music. But sometimes the aha moment comes from meeting people or talking with people who have a different life experience than you. Describe a topic, idea, or concept you find so engaging that it makes you lose all track of time. Why does it captivate you? What or who do you turn to when you want to learn more? If we asked your parents, teachers, and friends what you do well or what you spend the most time talking about or working on, what would they say? What Google searches take you down the rabbit hole? I say that because I've definitely had a few students over the years who are those students who will stay up to all hours at night, just like getting pulled down this Google search rabbit hole. And then maybe that leads to opening new books about a topic or watching documentaries. But think about those things that you find truly engaging. And I would encourage you to think beyond just your favorite subjects in school, and really think about like that show you watched or that person you talked to who really sparked a new interest for you. Or maybe it was something that sparked a new interest for you. So think about those instances or those concepts or topics, and that could be a really cool essay for you to write as well. And number 7 is just share an essay on a topic of your choice. It can be one you've already written, one that responds to a different prompt, or one of your own design. So that's kind of a catch-all. I have to say though, very rarely do I have students choose number 7. Typically my students will, and there's nothing wrong with prompt number 7, but typically I've just noticed that they prefer to write to one of the previous 6. All right, so those are your prompts. I want you to think to yourself about which prompts gave you the most ideas. And you're gonna kind of put it all together. So all these activities you've done, I want you to go back to all the previous exercises, pick the essay prompt that your previous ideas and brainstormings naturally address or support. And then I want you to write the prompt number here. And I'm gonna give you a few minutes to do this because you might be doing a process of elimination. Maybe you've got 3 prompts that you're really excited about. I want you to try to narrow it down. So take some time going through the brainstorming exercises, the values exercise, the archetype exercise, the use science descriptions, the dialogue, and think about which is there a funnel that all your ideas are going through, or is there a direction that all your ideas so far are kind of headed towards, and which prompt do they support? So I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that, and you're going to, once you've done that and identified the prompt number, I want you to jot down some of your favorite ideas or themes or topics that have come up so far. Again, if you can kind of find a common theme through your exercises, that common thread through all the exercises over the last hour, jot those down here in the box, or if you're doing this by hand, write them down on a piece of paper. And I'll go ahead and pause while you are all working on that. All right, so again, if you're having trouble picking just one prompt, we can work through that in our future meetings. If you already have some ideas that you're trying to sort through, go ahead and just run with those ideas in the writing activity that we're going to do next, in the free writing activity. Oftentimes I will have students just free write and for a while work on an essay just around an idea that they're really excited about, or a theme or a narrative that they're really excited about, and 9 times out of 10 we can find a prompt that suits that story or that narrative. So don't stress too much about the prompts, but for those of you who are struggling with what to write about, the prompts can really help ignite your ideas. Okay, so let me share the screen here, and this next activity is creating an anchor. So the idea of an anchor is, I mean, it's pretty common in narratives, but also in novels and literature, but also in movies. So good movies typically have some kind of anchor. It's basically a theme that is woven through the whole story that sort of brings you back or anchors you back to the main theme or the main idea. So some anchors I've seen in the past in students' essays are things like a Nalgene water bottle, a ski jacket, or an activity like flying in an airplane, I once had a student use this this anchor of a person cutting cheese, not in the gross way, but in the actual like slicing cheese as an appetizer way. And it was a really fun essay, and that was kind of her anchoring image that she started with and sort of came back to, and it actually absolutely worked, as strange as that might sound. It might be, if you're an athlete, it might be your skis, it might be a basketball. I once had a student use her point shoes, because she did ballet competitively, as her anchor. A sticker, a photo. I had a student once use the anchor of a purse that her grandmother, who had since passed away, had given her. So all kinds of anchors, but it really helps to root your essay, especially if you're one to sort of go on tangents and write for days. An anchor can really help you stay focused, especially when you only have 650 words. It also helps your readers stay focused. Keep in mind, these admission officers are reading thousands of these essays, and the easier you sort of make it for them to follow you, the better. And an anchor is a great way to help the reader follow you through your story. So I want you to think about what topic, idea, value, or object will anchor your essay draft. What will keep the reader focused, engaged, and wanting more? Think of your anchor as a common thread that connects your entire essay. You'll likely begin and end with a reference to your anchor. Write down a few anchors here. So I want you to take a few moments in the box, or if you're typing in a separate Google Doc, I want you to just try to brainstorm 5 to 10 anchors that could be used in essays. I'll give you probably 3 minutes to do that, so we have enough time for free writing. Alrighty, so once you've got your list of anchors, at least 5, I want you to go ahead and begin your free write. So the last page in your workbook, if you printed it out, you can write by hand. If you prefer to type, you can do that in a new Google Doc. Be sure to label it as free write, or you can call it first draft. Put the prompt number at the top so we know which one you're thinking about. If you have a prompt, if not, you can free write based on your ideas, previous ideas, or ideas that you generated from these exercises. And be sure they're in the folder that you shared with me so we can talk about it at our next meeting. So I want to give you 10 minutes of free write time, so that we have 5 minutes at the end for any share out that you want to, if you feel comfortable sharing what you came up with in your free write. No pressure, you won't be forced to, but if you would be so gracious enough to share, I know it would inspire the other people on the call. So 10 minutes of free write. If you have any questions, text me. I'll be here checking the chat box if you want to chat about anything. Otherwise, I will leave you to it. Have fun. So we're at about the halfway mark. I just want to give you a couple ideas if you're feeling stuck. Think about how you might use that moment in time exercise you did with that hyper detail as an introduction or a hook to your essay. Oftentimes those sort of really detailed narratives serve as great hooks to essays. You might also use that moment in time to introduce your anchor. Perhaps your anchor is introduced that way. And then think about how your anchor object sort of is woven through the essay, or even part of the conclusion. Also try to incorporate some of the values you circled in the earlier exercise, some of your descriptions, especially if you're writing, well, all of these basically you're writing about yourself in some way, so using really good descriptors that were given to you in the U-Science assessment would be great. And you can choose to use your archetype or not. It was more for you to think about yourself in a new way. And so you're welcome to incorporate some of those things. In the archetype assessment, after you take the archetype test, you get a full sort of plan or sort of a roadmap for that archetype. So you might even use some of those tips and best practices in the roadmap and weave some of those ideas into your essay, since they're kind of made for your personal archetype. So just some ideas there, and I'm going to give you about 5 more minutes. All right, so hopefully that gave you a good start. I know that was only a few minutes, but I wanted to give you just a few solid minutes to get something started while you have all these ideas in your head after doing all the exercises. The college matchmaker exercise is really meant for the sort of the why us essay, which is often a supplemental essay. for colleges. So that will come in the future. You probably didn't use a lot of that here, although you could certainly use some of the ideas you generated there to talk about yourself and your experiences, especially for that activity, because you had to write about your experiences and personality traits that correspond to the colleges. So I think you could probably still glean some of that, some of those ideas in one of these Common App prompts. But that activity becomes particularly helpful when you're writing the YS essays. So I would encourage all of you to continue working through these exercises. Obviously, we had limited time today, but continue working through these exercises on your own. If you have a daily journaling exercise that you do, try to incorporate some of these ideas into those. Why I love the college essay writing process so much is because, like, obviously there's an end goal, like it's a huge part of your college application, but you learn so much about yourself, you learn so much about what type of college you want to go to. I've had students really, through their essay writing, think through what they want to major in and the type of college they want to go to. And I get to learn a lot about you too through this writing process, since I'm working so closely with you through these essays. So I really enjoy this process, even though it is a lot of work. To give you an idea of the timeline, so I said I like the first draft of the Common App essay to really come out in the spring, so that the final draft is ready before you leave for summer break. And then a lot of you are going to be all over the place over the summer, so I know a lot of you won't be able to get a lot done. But in the summer months, we can start working through some of the supplemental essays. 9 times out of 10, the essay prompts don't change from year to year, so sometimes I will have students start to work through essay prompts from last year's application cycle, just to start writing and to continue writing throughout the summer. But the majority of colleges release their essay prompts in August, so that's really when the real supplemental essay writing begins and continues through October 15th. October 15th is when I want all the drafts in and ready to be ready for the final edits. So I have time to go through your final edits before the November 1st deadlines. So that's sort of the big picture view. So thanks for joining me. I'm going to pause the recording so that we can do some share out. So stay on the call, but I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now.